Hello, everyone. I'm Hadass. I'm a technical program manager on the Privacy Sandbox team. I've invited several colleagues from the team to talk about the Privacy Sandbox initiative on the web and on Android. We've been talking to a lot of developers in the broader industry, and many have shared feedback and asked a lot of questions. Thank you for that. In this session, we'll go through some of the most frequently asked questions and share our thoughts. Before we get started, let's do a quick round of introductions. Let's take turns to say your name, role on the project, and your favorite breakfast beverage. I'll start first. Fresh squeezed orange juice is my go-to beverage.
Thanks, Hadass. My name is Vinay, and I lead the product and program management teams in Chrome working on the Privacy Sandbox. My drink of choice during the day is water. I know, I'm boring. My favorite cocktail, though, is a gin gimlet.
There's nothing like a cold, refreshing glass of water to fuel you through the day. My name is Kostova, and I am a technical lead and engineering manager on the Chrome Privacy Sandbox team. My favorite morning beverage is warm herbal tea. It really awakens my senses.
Even though I'm British and should also say tea, I'd actually prefer to start my day with a quality, freshly ground coffee. My name is Ryan, and I'm a product manager in the Privacy Sandbox team working on delivering the Android initiatives.
Let's start with the first question. Something basic for folks. What is the Privacy Sandbox anyway? Why should I care? As users go online today, whether you're researching recipes or playing games, your activities can be tracked across apps and websites and used to build digital profile without your knowledge. Your data could also be shared more widely than you intended. This enables, for example, a website to effectively learn about your activities on different site or app. Today, this tracking is commonly done through mechanisms like third-party cookies on the web or advertising IDs on Android. While both Chrome and Android give you controls to manage tracking that is done through third-party cookies or advertising IDs, other tracking methods based on information about your device or browser, when combined, can create fingerprint for your device. The Privacy Sandbox is an open-source initiative that aims to make the web and Android more private. It offers privacy-preserving APIs as alternative to third-party cookies and ad IDs. For example, some of these APIs support common advertising use cases like targeting and attribution, which aid websites and apps' ability to monetize and help keep the web open and vibrant. The Privacy Sandbox is a multi-year effort. Chrome first announced it in August 2019, and we just announced it for Android in February of this year. We know that transitioning to the new solution can be challenging, and it is important to get support from the broader developer community. In fact, we've already started engaging with you and iterating based on your input. We have published a set of technical proposals and explainers on the designs, most of which are still in active discussion. I encourage you to keep reviewing the details, think through how your use cases might be affected, and share your suggestions and questions. Another question that comes up quite a bit is, what are the commonalities you would highlight between Privacy Sandbox on the web and on Android? The Privacy Sandbox initiative intends to provide a clear path to improve user privacy on the web and Android without putting access to free content and services at risk. We're taking a consistent approach to evolve ads-related technology across both platforms, so advertisers and ad techs can have a similar workflow to manage their campaigns and other business needs. Android and the web platform will follow similar designs for the ads privacy-preserving API. For example, both platforms will use the same taxonomy for topics, share the same key-value server for Fledge. The aggregate reporting workflow will also work similarly across the platforms. There are other shared concepts, including custom-defined audience for use cases like remarketing, as well as similar ways to register events and conversations for attribution and reporting purposes. However, Android and the web are also fundamentally quite different in a number of ways. First, there are technical differences, such as the fact that web standards are developed in standards bodies such as the W3C, whereas Android develops on the AOSP. At the technical implementation level, there are different programming languages involved. There are also differences in how permissions are handled and how third-party libraries and SDKs are used and distributed, which prompt us to innovate with the SDK runtime, which is Android-specific. There is also the fact that technologies like third-party cookies on the web are used in applications beyond advertising, so it is important that the Chrome team develop and recommended alternative solutions for those use cases as well. In short, we share common design to help streamline workflows, but we may deviate on certain technical aspects such as API surfaces and how they interact with the platform.
Speaking of cookies, here's an interesting question on why Chrome hasn't blocked third-party cookies yet. I can elaborate on the point that third-party cookies on the web have uses and applications that include advertising and so much more. These uses have evolved over the past couple of decades, and we have been studying these uses and are developing purpose-built, sustainable solutions for them. We want to ensure that the web stays healthy and continues to grow, and without supporting the use cases that have come to rely on third-party cookies, we run the risk of making the web less useful for those that depend on it. The ability to compose web applications by using libraries and services provided by third parties are what allows individuals and businesses to develop rich web applications relatively easily, while those websites can focus on the core aspect of what differentiates their business. These third-party services could be for identity and login management, serving video content, site analytics, technical support widgets, store locators, and many others that make our experience as users of the web so rich. Comprehensively blocking third-party cookies, without use of block lists of websites or error and abuse-prone heuristics, has wide-ranging impact on the many use cases and breaks user experience on many websites. We are taking a long-term, sustainable approach with a path directed towards deprecating third-party cookies. One that ensures consistent privacy protections for users, platform predictability for developers, and ideally interoperability across all web browsers. This needs a careful, deliberate approach, which is why we are providing the ecosystem advance notice and collaborating and consulting to ensure a healthy, sustainable, private by default web platform. It's also why we are engaging with regulators around the world, including through our work with the UK's Competition and Market Authority, or CMA, in line with our commitments for the Privacy Sandbox for the web. I should also note, we are conscious that simply blocking third-party cookies without providing a well-lit alternate path to supporting existing use cases could lead to a migration to covert tracking techniques like device fingerprinting and client IP addresses. While we are currently focused on developing privacy-first alternatives for existing use cases that depend on third-party cookies, we have also shared some ideas with the community on how we plan to tackle covert tracking. As we think about privacy protections beyond phasing out third-party cookies, we plan to continue our open, collaborative development approach.
Thanks, Vinay. I couldn't agree more with the need to be thoughtful and collaborative with the industry. Earlier, we brought up the SDK runtime on Android. I wanted to come back to that. So what is the SDK runtime, and how should I think of it as an Android developer? Since Android's beginning, the OS has relied on app sandboxing to isolate apps from each other. By default, apps can't interact with each other and have limited access to the OS. This helps to protect the apps and the system from, for example, from buggy or malicious apps. If you look at the Gradle dependencies in people's Android projects, it's common to see many third-party SDKs for all sorts of purposes, including analytics, advertising, mapping, and so on. This is a great thing, because through libraries and SDKs, we can build on top of each other's domain expertise. Today, app code and SDK code are packaged together. When the app is installed and runs on the user's device, the code in the app and SDKs actually share the same context within the app's sandbox. So, if a user grants permissions to the app, SDKs can also access related resources associated with those permissions. For developers, you are responsible for the behaviors of your entire app, including those of any third-party SDKs being used. So it's important to have some technical guardrails in place to give you controls and transparency. The SDK runtime offers a framework for compatible SDKs to operate in a separate process from the apps. SDKs only have access to a handful of permissions, such as internet, network state, or those permissions related to accessing the privacy-preserving APIs. Access to memory and storage is also isolated. Compatible SDKs can communicate with the app and other SDKs through well-defined APIs. This design helps reduce undisclosed access and make sure that the sharing of app data is intentional. The SDK runtime proposal also includes a concept to separate SDK and app distribution. SDK developers could release their versioned SDKs to compatible app stores. App developers can separately release their apps without statically linked version dependencies. This means that when a user downloads this app, the installation process could separately download the app's dependent SDKs from the App Store. This mechanism helps protect users and app developers from invalid SDKs being loaded, while enabling app stores to significantly reduce the burden of SDK distribution from app developers. We're currently iterating on the design and the developer experience. For example, there will be tooling in place for SDK developers to technically declare a piece of code as SDK library, its major and minor version. For app developers, there'll be tooling support to test and debug locally and on devices with compatible app stores.
It is indeed common for Android apps to have quite a few third-party SDKs. I encourage SDK providers and app developers to read about SDK runtime. Try it out in the developer preview and share your feedback. Speaking of feedback, as we mentioned earlier, we started the initiative in 2019. Right from the beginning, we have committed to a web standards first approach to ensure that all our proposals are developed in the open. We have been grateful to receive thoughtful engagement and robust feedback from businesses, web developers, and our fellow browser vendors. Additionally, we have made public commitments to developing the Privacy Sandbox in a continuous process of collaboration and consultation, and ensuring that we do not design the Privacy Sandbox to advantage Google's own ads business. Some examples of suggested improvements we've incorporated into the Privacy Sandbox include evolving FLoC into topics, which we believe makes it easier for developers to leverage, further reduces the chances of a user being categorized or recognized as belonging to a vulnerable or protected group, and makes re-identification significantly harder by reducing the ability of a developer to use topics to identify a user across sites. UI, to provide enhanced transparency and controls for Chrome users across the globe. First-party sets is a web standards proposal that allows web developers to indicate when their websites are composed of multiple domain names, all owned and maintained by the same organization or individual. Today, cookies and other browsers state, when accessed across such domains, are considered third-party by browsers, when in fact they're all run by the same party or entity. We are working on this capability because we found that developers often use this approach for a variety of reasons, ranging from better security practices to branding and marketing reasons. However, we want to make sure that these collection of domain names or sets conforms to a set of documented, well-understood criteria that are intuitive to how users understand domain name associations. Our development of these criteria has benefited from feedback received in public forums.
It is great to see how the teams has incorporated feedback. This just further underscored the importance of developer feedback to the Privacy Sandbox initiative. Next, let's talk about advertisers and ad techs in general. What impact do we expect advertisers and ad techs to see with the Privacy Sandbox solutions? Overall, the broader tech industry is increasingly becoming more privacy first, which is a good thing. A key goal is to help developers and publishers provide free content and resources without relying on intrusive tracking. We encourage the broader ads ecosystem, advertisers, and ad tech platforms to learn more about the specifics of Privacy Sandbox and continue to share feedback as the industry progresses from evaluation to end-to-end testing. As testing efforts begin more broadly, we expect to get more data on metrics like ad campaign performance and feedback on the APIs and tools. We're engaging with ad tech platforms and ad networks to iterate on the designs. If you're an advertiser, I encourage you to work with your partners and ad tech providers, if you haven't already, to better understand their plans to support the Privacy Sandbox APIs.
We mentioned earlier that Android innovates on the AOSP. So one question we get is about exactly how Privacy Sandbox APIs will be rolled out to the ecosystem. A key design goal for Privacy Sandbox on Android is the ability to flexibly release and distribute new privacy-enhancing functionality and updates to users. To achieve this, key components including the SDK runtime, topics, Fledge, and the attribution reporting APIs will be distributed as mainline modules to mobile devices, which is our current focus for the initiative. This will allow us to deliver improvements to supported devices in a seamless way outside of Android's normal release cycle. This is the same mechanism we've been using to deliver other modularized system components such as Permission Controller and Documents UI. During the developer preview, you can download system images for the emulator and supported devices for developer testing purposes. You also have access to developer documentation and SDK. When we enter the beta phase, we'll begin rolling out mainline updates to supported devices. You can learn more from the Android developer site.
Let's switch gears and talk about things from a user perspective. How will the user experience change once Chrome launches Privacy Sandbox in Chrome? The designs of the APIs showing relevant content and ads enable Chrome to provide meaningful transparency and control over the data used within the Privacy Sandbox. Specifically, the user will have user controls that allow them to see the interests that can be used to personalize the ads they see, remove any or all of them, or opt out entirely. In addition to the enhanced transparency and control we're offering users to control their ads experience, we hope that users don't otherwise see a significant difference as they browse the web. We are intentionally designing the Privacy Sandbox to keep the web open and thriving. The web has served as an incredibly powerful platform, providing access to content that was previously unobtainable, usually with low to no cost. It's also created new communication methods and means, connecting us and keeping us together, even during times when we were encouraged to physically distance ourselves from each other. We want to keep the web open and highly capable of providing access to content, educational material, news, and productivity tools. We are focused on improving privacy on the web responsibly, while ensuring that the use cases that have made the web great continue to work. Ryan, what can you share about the expected UX on Android when the beta is released?
Overall, the in-app experience for the user shouldn't change much. One of the goals for the Privacy Sandbox on Android is to protect user privacy while still enabling apps to show relevant advertising to their users. While we continue to iterate on the user experience, what's clear is that it's important to give users more transparency and control through their Android settings. For example, just like Vinay described for Chrome, we intend to let users view and even remove the topics that have been inferred by the apps on their device. By providing additional controls and transparency, and by computing more on device, users will hopefully have more confidence that less of their personal information is accessible by third parties. As the advertising industry rolls out support for the Privacy Sandbox solutions, users should expect the privacy improvements to continue to get stronger over time. As we continue to refine the design, we'd love to hear your feedback and input on how we can further improve the user experience. Feedback is obviously key to not just the user experience, but for all aspects of the Privacy Sandbox, across both Android and the web. Kosteba, how should developers give feedback even as these features are being tested?
First things first, I want to make sure that everyone is aware all of these technologies continue to be actively iterated on within standards bodies, and we're certainly still inviting feedback. Our plan for Chrome is to phase out third-party cookies in late 2023, but only after we believe we've developed new technologies that developers can use to keep the web great. Most of our key technologies are testable now and will continue to be testable over the coming months. We also intend to give developers time to test the new technologies together and alongside current practices that rely on third-party cookies to allow for additional insights and opportunities to optimize the designs. We remain committed to designing these new technologies with the ecosystem so they can work for the ecosystem. And in order to do that, we need to ensure that those in the ecosystem are able to provide us feedback. To support that, we have created multiple feedback channels depending on the kind of question or proposal. You can collaborate on individual proposals, each of which have a GitHub repository, as is customary for web standards proposals. Anyone with a GitHub account can open an issue. Track and respond to Chromium feature development by following along on our public mailing list, BlinkDev. Proposal developers send email intents to the mailing list at every stage of the proposal, including when an initial implementation is being prototyped, when the feature is ready to test in origin trials, and when it's ready to ship. Track and discuss individual feature development on public mailing lists dedicated to some individual proposals. Raise and track feature issues on the Chromium issue tracker. Follow and participate in standards bodies. All of our proposals are under discussion in groups within either the World Wide Web Consortium, or the W3C, or the Internet Engineering Task Force, or the IETF. Submit feedback through a feedback form for issues that don't fit into any of the above categories. I know that's a lot of information, but we have it all compiled for your reference at the URL listed at the top of the slide. We, of course, also hear a similar question for Android, as the initiative was developed fairly recently and in an early phase. How do you plan to engage with the industry and developers? Ryan, can you take this one?
Since our announcement, we've heard a lot of interest from developers and the broader industry. We've met virtually with some of you and have already heard some great feedback. We look forward to hearing from more of you in the coming months. And in the meantime, I want to share a number of helpful resources. As a starter, if you haven't caught up on the technical proposals for the SDK runtime and the privacy-preserving APIs, check out the link. We've also started a developer preview program that gives you an early look at the SDK, system images, and docs for early assessments and testing. We'll be iterating on it throughout the year. There's also an issues tracker link for feedback or any questions you may have about the initiative. We are regularly sharing updates of the design and program. Last but not least, please consider signing up for email updates. We've included a URL for you to access all of these resources.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes our Q&A session on the Privacy Sandbox. If there is one takeaway, it is the importance of developer feedback. We realize the impact of the Privacy Sandbox initiative on the industry, and we are looking forward to working with you to make the web and Android more private.